shortly, soonish. That way you can refer back to it later. So without further ado, welcome CobraPin, making custom games with CobraPin pinball controller. We have Thomas, Michael, and Adrian on the stage. Y'all go ahead and introduce yourselves and take it away.
Yeah, so my name's Thomas Fulenwider. I made the CobraPin back in 2021, and so I've been doing it since then. And I've also brought a couple of custom games to the show here. None of them are fantastic, but I'm focusing on the electronics, so that's my excuse.
Mike Latiolais. I am a customer of Thomas's. I've made 2 games and brought them to the show so far, Middle-earth 2.0 last year, and Escape from Hell, both last year and this year. They're both CobraPin based, and I'll be talking a little bit about lessons learned there, and then also talking about another manufacturer who can help you guys with starting off playfield work.
Okay. My name is Adrian Degroot. I built a custom joust, which was here last year and this year, and I'm looking to build another head-to-head based off of joust and other head-to-head games, and I'll be using the CobraPin system. So I'll be talking about some lessons learned from my builds.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, do you want to go back to the slides? All right, let me step out of the way here. All right, so here to talk about building custom games with CobraPin. So go ahead, next slide. All right, so general overview of what the plan is. I'm going to talk about an electronics overview, CobraPin itself, and do a little bit of a build demo over here. Mike's going to talk about his Middle-earth, Escape from Hell, and TRIDENT Pinball as a resource, and then Adrian is going to talk about his head-to-head game. So go ahead. All right, so when you look at a pinball machine through an electronics lens, it's actually quite simple. You just have lights, coils, switches, displays, and sounds. That's basically it. So, you know, for the lights, you have inserts, general illumination, flashers, coils, you got flippers, pops, slings, etc. Switches, you got buttons, optos, targets, rollovers, and displays. You have segment displays, DMD, monitor, etc. And sound, you've got speakers, bells, and chimes. And really, the bells and chimes are just sounds that are masquerading, or coils that are masquerading as sounds. And then the segment displays and score wheels are also masquerading as something else. So it's actually essentially just lights, coils, and switches that you're dealing with for a controller. So go ahead. All right. So then when you look at a pinball machine and how you control this pinball machine, most of the modern machines have some sort of computer. It could be a mini PC, a single board computer, or a desktop that you bury in the bottom of the joust. And then that has to control, that has a logic for your game. So that computer is going to control your sound system, and it's going to control your monitor or your DMD. Then that computer is also going to talk to some sort of pinball controller. This pinball controller could be fast, it could be spike, it could be CobraPin, multimorphic, whatever the case. You have one or more pinball controllers in the machine. And those are what's going to control the segment displays, the lights, the coils, and the switches. So that's just a general overview of how most modern pinball is controlled. Go ahead. All right, so then, of course, we have the software. I think most people here are probably a little bit more familiar with the mechanics because you've renovated machines, had your own machines, so you may be more familiar with the mechanics. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the software. So the main software that homebrewers are using is called Mission Pinball Framework, or MPF. And that is a nice open source system, so it's completely free, and under the hood, it's Python based, so the language that it's written in is Python, but you don't actually have to write your game in Python. You can write it in config files, which are much easier and simpler for non-programmers to understand. So that's the software that's running on the computer. There's also software, sometimes referred to firmware, running on the pinball controller itself. And so in the case of CobraPin, the firmware that's being used is the Open Pinball Project firmware. And one of the nice things about Open Pinball Project firmware is that it's very configurable. So, the CobraPin can actually be reconfigured on some of its outputs, and I'm going to show one of the cases here where you use one of the input pins as a servo output, an RC servo output. So, go ahead. All right, so when we look at MPF, what is a quote-unquote game in MPF? It's just YAML text files, sounds, images, videos, and they're all arranged into this known file structure. And if you go to the MPF site, they have an MPF tutorial, and it will actually step you through creating this file structure and getting your first game flipping. So you're not compiling anything like that, and so it's a little bit simpler. You just access the folder where your game is, put the right files in, and then you're good, right? Another thing that I wanted to highlight here, this is a screen of me working on my tag team game, and I actually have the game running. So the game is running on MPF, but I have no hardware connected to it. So I'm working upstairs in my office, and my pinball machine is downstairs. I'm not connected to it at all, but I'm able to program the game without actually having the game in front of me, because I can emulate some of the things here with MPF Monitor. So I can see what the screen's going to look like. I can see the play field, and we have lights and switches built into this image, and you can actually, you can actually click on. Did I ruin it?
It's okay.
Okay.
It's a safety feature. Yeah, you can just hit the top button.
Oh, did I get too close?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. All right, so you can click on the switches and activate the switches within the game, so you can play the game even though you have no machine connected to it. And then you can also see various statistics with the events that are happening. MPF is event-driven, so it's very important to see the events that are happening. And then these are switch states, and all in all, you can make a game without it actually being in front of you. I'm not saying that that's necessarily fun. It's much more fun to actually have the game in front of you. But anyway, I just wanted to show that that was available. All right, go ahead. All right, so what is CobraPin? So this is this was launched on Kickstarter in 2021 as kind of an all-in-one pinball controller, and it's based on the Open Pinball Project firmware. And now I sell it on Pinside, and it's used all over the world to make some pretty fantastic machines, like Friday the 13th, which won Best of Show. So that was awesome at TPF. And then Dukes of Hazzard, also a great game. And then Octo or Ernie built a League of Legends based on CobraPin, so that's awesome. And then there are also 4 games across the way here that are using CobraPin that we're currently working on and improving. So now that's how it started, was in Kickstarter in 2021. And that was successful, so that's great. And it has now expanded into many boards based on community requests. So one thing that you'll find if you kind of get into this whole homebrew thing is there is a very broad community and people that are very interested in helping each other out and helping the hobby out in general. So I get a lot of requests for different boards and lights and things like that, and if I get enough requests and I think I can produce it reasonably, then I go ahead and make it. So I did want to give a special thanks to Hugh Spar, who is the Open Pinball Project designer, Jan Kontert, who was managing MPF for a while and did a ton of work to help me get CobraPin up and running on MPF. And then Adrian Degroot as the voice of the customer when I was developing, because I wanted to build a system that wasn't just for me, but for a customer in general, and he was my example customer. So thank you. All right, go ahead. So just an overview of the boards that I have. So this is the main CobraPin board. I'm going to get too close again. The main CobraPin board, and this controls lights, switches, servos, coils, and it also has a little relay output. And then based on community requests, I also built a satellite board which has more switches, more coils, and another LED output. And then I built the expansion board, which has a support for a lamp matrix as well as more switches and coils. And then I also have the suite LED board, and that was based on request. A lot of people were using this product called Fade Candy for controlling their serial LED lights, and that product got discontinued. And so people kept asking for an affordable board that would basically just do lights. So I made this one, which does lights, 256 LEDs, as well as 30 switch inputs. Yeah, excellent, excellent.
It's red.
Yep. That one right there. All right. And then, based on community requests and my own desire to trick out my pinball machine, I started making a bunch of serial LED lighting. So I have these insert boards. They come in panels. These come in panels of 45, and then you can use those to light inserts or light GI light pipes. So I have some examples over across the way if you want to talk to me afterward, and I can show you. And then I also make these star post LEDs. There's 8 LEDs in those, and so you can get some swirling effects. And then also dome and pop bumper LEDs. These are actually the same board, and they both have 8 LEDs in them, all full color. And then this past year, I've been working on connectorizing all of my LED boards so that it's just kind of plug and play. You don't have to do soldering to get your lighting up and running. So, all right. And I also made segment displays because Adrian wanted segment displays for his jousts. And I resisted for quite a while, and then was finally able to find a good way to produce them.
With commas, too.
Yes, with commas. So I have 8-digit and 2-digit, and they can be connected together to make, like a 2x16 display or a 1x32 display or whatever you want. And then the 2-digit is for like a ball or a player count or a playfield timer like in Rick and Morty or something. So, yep, I have segment displays. All right. And I wanted to let people know that there is more to come, more boards to come based on community requests. And I'm currently working on a new distributed board set. So the original CobraPin is intended as a all-in-one controller. I've got a number of requests for actually a distributed system from some small manufacturers who want it to simplify the wiring. So they're willing to pay a little bit more if the wiring gets a little bit easier. So I'm working on that. I hope to have it out in the next year or so. Go ahead. All right, and I'm gonna do a build demo here, and stay tuned because there will be a chance to win some swag. So I'm gonna go ahead and move down here and get started on that. Okay. So I was talking to some people on the TRIDENT Pinball Discord chat. And hang on just a second. And asked them hey, what would you guys like to see in some sort of build demo? And they said, we want to actually see you connecting up a CobraPin board so that we know kind of what's involved here. So I made this test board here that's basically all the electronics in a pinball machine that I've reduced to this small size. And so bear with me. Hopefully, even though it's small and doesn't have a lot of features, hopefully it'll still be interesting. So like I mentioned, everything is run off of a mini PC. So I have a mini PC here, got power supply and power strip. I normally run off of 48-volt power supply as well as a 5-volt power supply. For this demo, I decided to simplify it, and the 5 volts is just running off of the 5 volts USB. So we'll go ahead and get the mini PC plugged in. I've got 2 USB connectors here that are going to go to the CobraPin board. I've got a flipper, a number of my lights here, and a button. So the lights are already wired up. I'll show it to you on the other side. And then the cable for the flipper is going to go into the other side as well. So we'll go ahead and flip it over. And so the lights in this case, I'm using my insert lights, but I have these light pipes, GI light pipes, similar to like Jersey Jack does the same sort of thing. All right, so we'll flip it over. And now we have the CobraPin board here. And again, just to highlight, there are 24 coils up here on top with the 3 connectors. I've got power, input, and output along the side. Everything is fused, and we got power filtering and 2 small processors here. And then switches are along the bottom, and then 2 LED outputs. So each LED output can support 256 RGB LEDs, so you get 512 RGB LEDs with this board. So again, I said there was USB coming from the computer, so we'll go ahead and connect that to our processor boards here. And then I also have a really basic sound system here, so just a Bluetooth audio connection to the computer, and self-powered here with a 5 1/4 speaker. And then I also have one of my segment displays, and this is going to be connected via the serial LED connection. So we'll go ahead and connect that up to the serial LED output here. And then, so with any of these serial LED devices, it's all in a chain. So it goes into this device, comes out of that device into the next thing. And in this case, I'm just using this little jumper connector board. And then this cable here ends up going to the lights that I showed you previously on the other side. All right. Now, this is the 48-volt input that came from the power supply on the other side. So we'll go ahead and connect that to the power input. And then I mentioned that these are fused. There are fused outputs for the coils, so I have my connector that has the power supply running to the flipper. So we'll go ahead and get that connected. And then the actual coil itself, I'm using a dual wound Williams coil, so I've got a hold and a power connection here. And one thing that I want to stress when connecting to the coils on the CobraPin is there are 8 coils per connector, and it's a 9-pin connector. So there's 1 extra pin, and it's used as a key, like Williams did long ago. So don't use that pin. It's marked here as with an asterisk. Don't use that pin. Don't connect to that pin. If you want to, you can cut that pin off and actually use it as a key, because if you do connect the wrong thing to that pin in the wrong way, you will blow a transistor. That being said, I have these transistors on here that are surface mount. Most people don't want to replace a surface mount transistor. And that's fine. I have a YouTube video on how to replace these where you just cut 2 leads off of it, and then there are through holes for inserting another transistor that you can solder through hole, so it's a little bit easier. All right, and then, I have a little mode button here that is just a jumper connector, so I'll connect that in. And then we will connect, this is the connector for the button as well as servo. So let me make sure I get it on the right connector here. All right. And hopefully I have plugged everything in. And we'll go ahead and get powered up. And then as this is powering up, I want to go back to the slide deck. Right. Nothing's exploded. This is great. All right. So one thing you may notice, I don't know if, so if we can go back here, sorry about that. It boots up with this weird test pattern, and then the lights have this test pattern. That's just to let you know that the lighting system is working. MPF hasn't booted up yet and taken control of those lights, so we'll just wait for it to take control of those lights. And now we can go back to the slides. And next one. Okay. So I wanted to give a little bit of a taste of MPF config files. And basically, the config files are cut up into these sections. So in this case, there's the hardware section, and then there's attributes or devices in each of those sections. So in order to set my hardware up for CobraPin, my platform is OPP because it's based on OPP firmware. My driver boards are Gen 2. That's a OPP specific thing that you just put in your config file and don't worry about. And then my segment displays are based on a device called light segment displays because I have them hooked up into the lighting system. And then I also tell MPF, these are the communication ports that I am using to talk to my 2 processor boards. And this is a Linux-based system, so that people familiar with Linux will recognize this as a common COM port name, but if you're used to Windows, it'll just say like COM7 or COM11, whatever Windows assigns it. So go ahead to the next one. And then for switches, there's just a switch section, and you name your switch, and in this case I said S left flipper. That just means switch left flipper. I came up with that name. You can use whatever you want. And this number here is the number that is actually printed in silkscreen on the board itself. So it's 109, and then I have this other mode switch that's connected to 1010. And so you can just reference either wiring diagrams online or the actual silkscreen that's printed on the board itself. Go ahead to the next one. And then I also have these lights up front that I've arranged as a light strip. It's actually called light stripes in MPF. And then I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is how you describe that these are, RGBW LEDs and get them set up on a certain channel. And there are 8 of them, right? And then this is how you set up your segment display. So first you have to set up the lights for the segment display, and that's using this NeoSeg display section. And then once you have those lights configured, then you actually arrange the segment display itself. It has 8 digits. As it scrolls, it'll update the scrolling at 30 hertz. And the light group that it's using is the NeoSeg 0, which we created up there in this light thing. So I know this is definitely going to go over most people's head because like, oh man, there's so much text on there, I'm not sure what's going on. But the main thing is each one of these steps is actually not that bad. and you just have to go on the MPF documentation site. There's lots of examples. People will actually post their games so that you can use somebody else's game as a reference and look at their code and how they did it. One of the things that Chris mentioned yesterday in the Homebrew discussion was, you know, when you build a machine, it's this giant elephant, and the only way you're going to be successful at developing this giant elephant is to chop it up into little tiny bits and just, you know, how am I going to set up my segment displays? All right, well, that's not that many lines of code. There are examples online. We can figure this out. All right, next. And then for setting up the flipper, I've got, first you set up the coil section. This actually defines the power and the hold coils, which numbers they're on. Again, it's printed on the silk screen, and you can use references online. And then you use each of those coils to create a flipper. So there's a flipper section. I'm creating this left flipper, and these are the coils and the switches and the switch that's going to enable those. All right, next. And then I also have a servo, which I forgot to plug in. I'll plug it in when I get down there. And you set up different positions that you want the servo to go through. It's just a position that's 0 or 1, from 0 to 1. And again, you tell it which pin it's on, and it's on 108 in this case. All right, next. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but I wanted to give an example of a show. So much of MPF is based on shows. So that could be light shows, that could be segment displays, it could actually be coil shows where you want to play a sequence of coils, which you might do for like chimes, for example. You want to play a certain sequence. So there is a show. So first you create the show where for a duration of 1 second, it does this stuff, and then it steps to the next and does this stuff, and so on. And then, so you have the show, and then you have the show player. And the show player looks for different events, and then once it sees those events, then it plays whatever shows you have listed under it. So in this case, when the attract mode starts, it's going to play this attract segment loop show, and then it will also play this wave show. So it's basic idea. All right, next. I think that might be it. All right, go back and we'll come back down here. All right, so this has booted up. And you can see that we've got the segment displays that's saying test, 1, 2, 3. And then we also have the lights on the side doing this wave effect in blue. And I will also plug in this servo to show you that it's moving. So every 5 seconds or so, you'll see it wiggle. Yep, there, it wiggled. It's not moving a whole lot, but okay. And then we also have the flipper here, so I've got a button on this side, so we can work that. And it didn't blow up. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's always the hard part of setting your game up for the first time. Is it going to blow up when you hold the flipper on? So fortunately, it did not. All right, so and I forgot to plug in the speaker system also. So we got to have some sort of light, some sort of audio here. It's connecting. It's Bluetooth, so it takes a little while. Wait for it. Hey, we got, all right, so we got lights, we've got sound, we've got coils, we've got switches. We have ourselves a pinball machine. It's not that impressive though, right? Like, I mean, cool, we did something, but like, part of making a pinball machine is spicing it up a little bit, right? I told you at first that a pinball machine is just the lights, the coils, the switches. But really, it's a game, so you have to make it interesting in some way. So I wanted to try something. It's still not going to be the greatest pinball machine, but it may be better. So let's put it in a different mode. Yeah. So now we're in a different mode. It says CobraPin rocks now instead of just test 1, 2, 3, so that's good. We're going to switch out this servo to something a bit more interesting. So get that plugged in. All right, so now we have some new mechanics, but I feel like we're missing a little bit of artwork possibly. So, you know, got to do something here. So we'll get that hooked up here. All right. Yeah, we should do the other side. Sorry, you're not going to see this part. It's the same thing on this side. Okay. All right, so now we have some artwork. We still have sound effects, but it's still not much of a game. So we should probably add some balls. And these balls have numbers on them, which will be useful for if you get one, then you can get some free stuff up here at the end. So what's the best way to get these out to you? Probably need a shoulder strap. Yeah, that'll work. All right, protect your eyes. But so yeah, we have a pinball machine here, and I think this might be the first one with a shoulder strap, which is great. I think this might be the pinball machine that launches balls the furthest. I still can't compete with basically any Nerf gun, but whatever. So, are you ready, sir? All right. It bounces, so it'll probably hit the ground first, to be honest, but here we go. Actually, it's not going to do it the first time because I don't think it's loaded. Okay, now it's loaded. Ready? Here we go. Yeah! we got a game. All right. So I'm going to launch a couple of these, so if you can get a ball here. Here you go. All right, so hopefully nobody's trampling anybody. We'll see, I might have one more here. No, I ran out. There it goes. I was going to do this with Nerf rival balls, but it turns out they get stuck on a flipper and they don't actually shoot out, so they're little 3D printed balls. But all right, I think, any questions on this madness? Yeah, this is a pinball version of a t-shirt launcher. All right, I think we'll move on then, now that I've riddled the floor with balls here.
Can we buy one of those?
Yeah, if anybody wants to trade my pinball machine for one of your pinball machines, then yeah, we can talk.
Swag.
All right, so am I up now? Okay, so my name is Mike Latiolais. I'm a builder. I am not a vendor, but I am helping out a vendor today. So
Thank you.
the CobraPin is a great controller system. So a lot of people, the next step is, what am I going to actually control with it? How am I going to start a game? And so I'm just going to show one possibility, well, a couple possibilities here. There's a company run by a guy named Ernie who's Octo on a lot of online forums, and it's Trident Pinball. And what he does is he offers kits that allow you to get started with this whole crazy mess. So it could be as simple as this sort of whitewood, which you'll notice has the bottom 1/3, which is a basic layout for a Stern style game. You've got a trough hole already cut, you've got a place for your flippers to mount, 2 slings, and your inner and outer lanes all set up already, and a shooter trough. And that is if you absolutely, I have great ideas here. I already know what I'm going to do. But, you know, start with cardboard, start gluing stuff up. You can get really far with just this. Once you have a good idea of what it is you want to do, you can also go back to Ernie, and he will cut a full playfield for you. And this is an example one that he sent with me to demo. I think this was his an early Beavis and Butthead prototype. And so you can see it already has a lot of inserts built into it, the same bottom 1/3 except with what's probably a ball saver insert hole down there, place for a video screen to show through, and pop bumpers and the whole 9 yards. So you can go back to him and really get set up for your custom machines. The way I started was by stripping down existing playfields. This was a very unloved Williams Flash, for example. You can see a lot of potential here in what you can do with one of these. So if you're kind of intimidated by the idea of a whitewood and where do I go from there, if there's a favorite game you have that you can find a playfield, and these are hanging on walls all over the place, they're showing up at swap meets, you can start with this as well. But the general idea is once you get the idea, you get the CobraPin, something similar to that, this is where the madness begins. And actually, any questions on that? I think I'm done. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned yesterday about getting started like
Mhm.
this, right? Did you imply that you can buy one of these with all the mechanisms underneath it?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted
Okay,
to hear.
sorry.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so he was asking, he was mentioning that I had said you can get a kit. So Ernie sells the full kit for what goes under here. So you can buy this whitewood and buy the kit that goes with it that will have, you can choose a CobraPin. It will have the flipper mechs, it will have all the switches, everything you need to get that bottom third completely populated and flipping, all in one package sent to you. The mini PC, the whole 9 yards. You can choose other controllers. I would always recommend CobraPin.
But he does carry fast as well,
Yeah.
so you can get a fast kit as well.
Go to Cobra.
So yeah, so that's a suggestion for getting started on the physical side of cutting these up. And there are, he also sells templates. So if you're going to be cutting your initial inserts out, I don't know how well you can see this. These are templates, router guides that you can actually use, and Ernie can supply you all the standard sizes and shapes to create the two level effect here with the ledge that the insert sits on. It's all right here as well, so he can supply that for you. All right, and I think that's it for that section.
Okay. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
there's
Oh,
the
there we
Trident information.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
you can,
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's a discount for the show, 15% off with that 15 off, and then the link's right there.
Yeah, and I believe that's for this weekend only. So this is the last day. So 15 off is the code.
Okay, oh yeah, you're going to talk.
so we're going to go to lessons learned of actually building systems with CobraPin. So my first project wasn't a complete custom. It was a brain-dead Atari Middle-earth that came to me completely, it wouldn't even power up. I went ahead and pulled the NPU and driver out, I pulled all of the power out, started rewiring it with a CobraPin and a satellite board to begin with. Runs on MPF like almost all of these do. The hardest part there was really switch wiring. Atari has a strange way of wiring up their switches, no switch matrix, so rebuilding that in place took a long time. I ripped out the lamps, put in serial RGB lamps similar to those, and once that was done, I didn't want any other physical changes. I wanted it to be Middle Earth, but I didn't want, you know, adding an extra ball in there. I didn't want to add mechanisms. It was all going to be just new rules and new scoring and things like ball save and stuff like that. And it turned out really well. It turns out you can do some things with like the upper loop up there that they never really played with, and it became, in my rules, it became like the center bonus shot for Munsters, where you go from a 2x, 3x, then a 6x bonus. It did the same thing with hitting the loops. I think if I was starting off now building that, I would probably try a little harder on getting the switches in place to connect up to the CobraPin, because that really was the bulk of my time there. And I don't know if anybody got to play that. That was here last year, and someone has purchased it now, and it's in their home. And hopefully they're improving it. So I think we can go to the next one. Okay, so this is a picture of the controller system. You can see I have a CobraPin, and I think that's the satellite board, right? I always get the satellite and see which one's the lamp.
Yeah, that's the satellite. It's the, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so that's the satellite board and the regular original CobraPin. For my PC, I tend to use old Chrome boxes. They're cheap, and this one I think costs $25 all in, and it's running a variant of Linux. Then I have a 48 volt power supply here, and then I regulate that down to 24 volts for this little display here. That's the HDMI display, and it's basically just the display out from the computer itself. And this is my 5 volt, and then I think I had a weird voltage here, 12 volts or something, for my audio system that I had to sort of shoehorn in there. And this all comes in, I leave extra power outlets here for soldering irons, just like old games used to have, or new games have as well. And then all of my incoming AC wiring is labeled properly, so, and then divvied out among the switching power supplies. One thing a lesson learned here, always connect the grounds of these switching power supplies, or else really weird stuff is going to happen and you will never track it down. And then after that, make sure you label everything. Be careful when plugging and unplugging things, because I cooked good chunks of this board when I plugged one thing in, one connector over. So always label everything, be mindful of what you're doing there, and you'll be fine. So that was Middle Earth 2, and then and then Escape from Hell is the one that's currently in there, and I think somebody has shut it down. It started off as a Williams Gulfstream that came to me as a $100 project, and I parted it out. There was really nothing left of it except for the playfield. A friend of mine who thought she had some free time decided she was going to try and build a machine, and I was like, well, here's a playfield for you. She stripped the art down, filled in some inserts, and then life happened, and it ended up back in my garage. My son saw the raw whitewood, which now looked like a pitchfork, and said, hey, we should make a devil's pitchfork sort of game, and that's where the theme came from. I got this about 3 months before Golden State 23. So at that point, it was a race against time. Can I really build a flipping game from the spare parts I had in my garage and this play field, and we got it working. It was flipping for Golden State 23, and until somebody made a really great shot that entirely blew up the right slingshot. So it went down, and then it was repaired over time. I simplified the rules, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Started again in March, really, because I had some other machines that needed work over the year, and so got it all finished up just about last week, really. And it's still got plenty of rough spots, but it's playable. You can go to the next one. So here's some shots. The original game, and you can see it started off with the 3x3 grid, which when she filled in this, created that idea of the pitchfork. And then this is the art as applied. My son did all of the artwork. He's a great artist, and he's for hire if anybody's interested. Continue. And then here it is getting mocked up. I had actually used I had been making a scared stiff, had some custom ball guides made, and I ended up reusing those just for this. Sort of worked out a different sort of play there, and then you can see bolting on parts. About this time I decided I didn't want to lose some of the imagery that was there, and the LEDs could shine through the vinyl. This was a vinyl wrap, just printed at Fast Signs. Cost about $150, I think. It was at this time that I realized my switch wasn't going to be playable like that, so it ended up becoming a different shape up here. But aside from that, everything was basically built. The original design we had for the kickback here, this is a sort of like the Jagoff kickback from F-14. And I decided that would be the throne from hell, or the throne of hell, and that's what you fire into to make jackpots in the multi-ball mode. So that one, we got it constructed, but it was too tall, so it didn't make it into this version. We'll rebuild something. Go ahead and go next. And then, so my lessons learned. The first thing is don't try to make the game overly complicated. We have these modern games that just have layers upon layers of modes and rules. And when you're starting off, it's, you want to throw everything in the kitchen sink in there and sort of back off on that. New ideas don't fit with every theme. Sometimes you just need to build something, realize that it's not working, and back out of it. Save some for the next game, I like to say. And I, like, Escape from Hell, really got bogged down with a bunch of different rules that felt repetitive because of the lack of shots on the play field. So eventually I peeled it back and I went to no extraneous modes. You have your base mode, you build up a couple of multipliers, a bonus and a playfield multiplier, and then you try to lock balls for a multi-ball. And at that point it just became a very, I like to describe it as space shuttle on crack. It's very fast, it's almost too fast, and working through the logic of allowing people to steal balls and things like that, other players, was a lot of fun, but it enhanced the play rather than bogging it down. I call these rework projects when you take an existing system, you don't just retheme it, but you actually rework everything in it. I would say there, if you're looking at starting that way, look for a playfield that sort of speaks to the theme you already have. Don't try to shoehorn things that, I'm going to add a ramp here and I'm going to add an upper playfield here. It's not worth it at that time. Start with a whitewood, but this is really a lot simpler to me. Make spreadsheets. I'm not great at documentation, but I found that if I just force myself to make a spreadsheet of every mode and everything I need, my to-do list, things like that, I got it done. Use source code management like GitHub. If you're not a programmer, GitHub might be, something completely new. But essentially, your source code doesn't just live on your work computer. It also is out in another system, and you can collaborate with other people, and you can see snapshots of what existed before. So if you've gone down a road and this code is really not working, you can back all the way out to a different state, start over, save your repos, or however you're working, save your work early and often, because you will delete it, you will blow something up, and you'll have to go back. Cable and wire management can make or break a project. Once you're in the depths of that, work on one system at a time. Cable tie everything. It will pay dividends. And then be willing to learn to create the art or hire a good artist and pay them appropriately. Artwork is such a fundamental piece of the whole pinball ethos, and it's worth getting that part right as well. So that's sort of what I learned there. I'll continue on. That's to you.
All right. So the project Joust that I worked on, it started in 2019, and really the intent was to learn about developing my own pinball machine and learning the electronics and the programming. And I ended up getting kind of obsessed with it and making it as close to the original as possible, because I discovered that the rule set in that Joust was really an interesting and challenging way of having a head-to-head game. But I built it from I purchased the play field and then built it up from that, and got mostly new parts. And I did have to 3D print some things and also get some metal parts fabricated. A friend of mine was also building a Joust, and he also he got those sourced. Let's see. The original cabinet, actually I should switch it to the next slide so you can see some of the pictures of it, what I'm talking about. So yeah, there was a lot of development of 3D printed bits that I couldn't find. So in the middle there, let's see, pointer there. So like the ball launcher there, I couldn't find it at the time. I 3D printed that. Some of the ball guides, I 3D printed those. And then for a while I was trying wiring with WS-2012 lights in kind of a string, and I was laser cutting these brackets to hold them together. And some of the lessons learned from that, I like Thomas's lighting configuration that he's doing now a lot better. So you can change out as opposed to having all of these circuits linked together in case a light burns out. So here was wiring up of the system. There was a lot of mechs going on in there. Learned to solder and crimp connectors. That's going to be a big part of it. And it seems intimidating, all of these mechs on here, but really you just work it a little bit at a time, and you'll end up accomplishing a lot. Just keep at it. And then over here I was programming. I could switch to the next slide. Okay. So over here, like Thomas was showing before, here's MPF running a game, and so you can do this remotely from the machine and develop your code and go through a lot of the different modes, troubleshooting it on there before you go to the game. Also, what was developed when I was working on the Joust was these segment displays Thomas made. Getting those to work really added to the game, and also that you could do alphanumeric and write out things, so the original game didn't have that. And then a twist on the original game, I made mine the size of a coffee table, so it's one way to fit another pinball machine into a place, into an apartment, is to make it in your coffee table. So built that from scratch based off of the original Yeah, so it was a lot of work and a fun project. And then switch to the next slide. So some of the lessons learned from that, reach out to the community. There's a lot of great resources out there. Now with Pinside, there's the MPF user group for whenever you've got problems with the code. In my case, trying to figure out the ball handling of having 2 troughs was kind of unconventional. And Jan, who wrote a lot of the code, he had a game, Good versus Evil, and had his own custom code for that. So it really helped out with the game development. And then there's Facebook Strictly Custom Pinball group. There's a lot of good information there, and people are willing to help out. And then Facebook, How to Build a Pinball Machine. I gotta give him credit for the little brackets that I used for the ball guides. Those are 3D printed. So a lot of inspiration from his site. And basically, you want to research and build out a BOM of what you need. I had to do that a lot with Joust because I didn't have any plans. I had to figure out what made up the original game. And then also what helped with figuring out the modes and how to program them, I've made flowcharts to try to figure out, okay, this step leads to that step, leads to that step, and what code do I need to do in Mission Pinball framework. As mentioned before, become proficient at using a multimeter, soldering and crimping. You're going to do a lot of troubleshooting, and you're going to end up blowing stuff, but letting the magic smoke out is a rite of passage. And you'll end up doing that. And then switching power supplies. I know some people who have made homebrews and they've tried to stay with the transformers, and really the best thing for these homebrews is using a switching power supply and also kind of sticking to the 48 volts. A lot of the stuff that you'll buy now off the shelf is designed to be working at 48 volts. My system, I was going by what the original coils were, and it was for 28 volts, so a lot of the coils were designed for that, so I'm kind of stuck. I was stuck having to replace a lot of the coils and the things that I had bought with higher strength coils. And then, yeah, 3D printing and laser cutting is great technology, or know somebody that has one. Thomas cut out a number of laser cut things for me. And yeah, as mentioned before, using the replaceable RGB W sticks and branch lights instead of WS2812. That's what I'm going to do on the next one I build. And troubleshooting issues can be mechanical, or they can be software, they can be electrical. You don't really know. It's interesting. Something that you think might be an electrical one may end up being a software one, and that's one of the things we ran into. I kept on having the flippers just power on and then burn out, pop a fuse, and kill a MOSFET, and I kept on thinking that my wiring was wrong, and I wired up the coils wrong or something. It turned out it was a software issue, or was it a firmware? I think it might have been a firmware issue that was embedded, but then I updated it. It was like, went onto the forum, and then somebody said, like, you know, have you updated? And then when I updated, the problem went away. So it's very weird. You get used to these kind of troubleshooting things. And then also that was the reason why Thomas put on the CobraPin board the ability to replace a MOSFET was from that experience, or that they're through-hole MOSFET replaceable. And then, one other thing, both Michael and Thomas used a populated play field. If I were to do it all over again, I think that I would have started off with something like that, found something that was, you know, from an original machine, or even something that didn't have electronics in it, and took it from there. And then what's great about these boards is that you can build, and these systems, is you can build anything that you want. It doesn't have to be a traditional game. You can end up doing a 2-player game, a 4-player game, or any sort of pinball-related sort of idea that comes to your mind.
Ball launcher.
Yeah, ball launcher. Yes, exactly.
And
Case
can
in point.
I interject one thing?
Yes.
based on the power supplies. He mentioned that he was going with 48 volts because his coils were 28 volts. My tag team is actually a 24 volt game, but I'm running it off of 48 volts, and you can adjust the pulse powers, pulse and hold powers of the coils in MPF, so that you can still run, you can mix and match coils in your game, and I think we've added more and more support for that in MPF, so now it's easier to mix and match. I think when you were doing yours, it wasn't quite as obvious how to do it. But we support that now, so that's what Tag Team is doing right now.
Yeah, and then same thing with flippers. Like my flippers are dual wound, so there's actually like 2 coils within the coil, and so you'd have to have 2 switching MOSFETs for that, but now you can have a single coil, right? And you can PWM that for both the flipping strength and then for holding.
Yeah, just like Stern does.
Right,
Yeah.
and then that way you don't end up running the risk of burning out the coil when too much power goes through the, what is the hold? Or no, it's the flipper.
It's when you accidentally enable the power full strength when you should be PWMing or going to a hold coil.
Yeah, which I've done before. So, yeah. Any questions, I guess? What were the questions? Was there anything else? What's the next slide? Oh, no.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, all right. Oh, yeah. That's. For the next one, I'm going to be building a head-to-head my own version, and just from the coils that was on the joust, this is what you would need, or what I need for a CobraPin, the controller board, and then also a satellite board. To cover all of the coils that are needed. So 24 from the controller and then 8 from the satellite is what's offered for covering the 26 coils that I need. So yeah, as mentioned, with a dual wound, I would need 8 of those coil MOSFETs. And then 58 direct connect switches, so that's how I ran mine, was instead of a switch matrix, it had a direct connect. And then in my machine, I had 120 lights, so I probably do about the same or even more. And then also had the segment displays. So I had 4 of the 2 segment displays and 2 of the 8 segment displays. So next slide. So yeah, as mentioned before, we've got replaceable transistors on the CobraPin board. And then the processors are also replaceable. There's a blue pill board. I think you're making your own ones of those.
Yeah, I couldn't get good enough supply of the blue pill board. It's kind of a common STM32 based board, so I ended up making my own so that I can have assurance of supply.
Coil LEDs that work without coil power, so then that way it's easier to troubleshoot instead of kind of guessing what's working, what's not. And then all of these additional boards were developed through user input. The expansion board, the satellite board, those Neo serial segment displays, and they come in many different colors too. Yeah, the one I started off with the orange ones, and then had a yellow for the yellow side and the blue for the blue side to kind of indicate which one's player 1 and player 2. Yeah, and all the lighting products, as demonstrated by the flashy lights right there. Very nice. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, links on where to learn more information.
Yeah, do you think we can get those added to the YouTube description? Awesome, thank you.
Cool.
Right. Are there any questions?
Okay, now it's question time.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to pass the mic around just so we can get good audio for the questions.
What kind of processor is used for the boards?
Yeah, so it's a STM32F103. It's a very common STM32 processor, and yeah, it's most often used in what's called a blue pill board. You can buy them off of Amazon, but like I said, I couldn't get them with enough quality reliably. Any other questions? Yeah.
Thanks for a sleepless night. Last night at 3 in the morning, I woke up and tried to install MPF. I have a small computer, gaming computer, and I did okay. I got the right version of Python laid down.
Yep.
I didn't understand the environment, the unique environment that goes along with it, but I did get the right version of MPF as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I have the three most basic components down. And at the end of that, I should get a demonstration screen that comes up that says, you know, welcome or hello, or I saw something in the tutorial about that.
Yeah, so in the tutorial, I think it talks about downloading a demo man example, and so you can run the demo man example. I will say that MPF installation is currently the hardest part of using MPF. It's just getting it installed.
Right, yeah.
They're currently working on it, trying to make that process a little bit smoother, and one of the main issues is MPF is actually broken up into two parts. There's the core MPF, like logic side, and then there's a media controller side. And the media controller side is the one that's causing most of the problems, and so they're actually going to introduce a different media controller in a future rev of MPF that should make it easier to install and easier to work with.
Cool, okay. Second part of the question is this concept of the environment. I don't have the buzzwords right, but it said, you know, in the install, create this environment.
Are you talking about a virtual environment?
I don't know the buzzwords yet, but there's, when one of you mentioned downloading other people's examples, do you put that in the same environment, or would that be in a different environment?
Well, what the virtual environment does is you've installed Python, right? And now you can tell it, I want you to create a virtual environment where when I've activated this environment, I now only look at this version of Python, and I can build MPF within this sandbox. And now if I want to experiment with different versions of Python or an upgraded version of MPF, I can go and build a new sandbox. And therefore, you know, if your MPF is, or your Python is set up with your operating system, you don't have to go gut it. You can make those changes without messing up your original version, things like that.
Right.
It's a lot more flexible.
Yeah, so for a beginner like me, I'll just keep it simple, stupid, right? So I'll just have one environment until I'm off and running, and I understand what's happening.
And then, sorry, as far as downloading somebody else's game and running it, so I've had that where somebody had some sort of issue and we couldn't work it out just over email. And so I asked them, would you be willing to post your game somewhere so that I can just download it? And it's literally just a folder that you put anywhere on your computer. And then when you're in a command prompt, you change directory to that folder. Mm-hmm. So you just open that folder in a command prompt and then run MPF. Right. And then it runs their game.
Okay, I think I'll be up late tonight working on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, friends.
Yeah, the main thing is that you're in the right folder of where you've got the project, so you can have another folder that has a different project, and then, but you just go to that, and that's where you run the MPF command.
Okay. I'll give that a shot.
Yeah.
Second question that I know I've asked several of you. Using vinyl as the first layer, kind of the quickest way in. So can I do a vinyl wrap, and then what did you do? Did you clear coat?
No, all I did was took a, I want to say it was a probably smaller than that, a very thin sheet of polycarbonate. I just picked it up at Tap Plastics. You can cut it with scissors or a razor knife or whatever. Initially, I thought I was going to lay it down over the entire top, but I found out very quickly that even LEDs and moderate solenoid use can heat them up enough to warp it. And at that point, there is a part of the thread where some cussing happened. But I woke up one morning bound and determined to solve the problem, and I went and I cut it into a floating playfield protector style. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it floats. There's nothing holding it down to create the warp points. and it still protects the art. On my next one, I'm probably going to try clear coating on top of the vinyl.
Yeah. Thomas, at one point in time, you had a playfield that you had done a wrap on and then did a cutout a playfield protector. Right?
Well, on my tag team tussle over here,
Oh, yeah.
it's still the original artwork, and I tried to level out as much of the inserts as I could, but it was a really rough game. So I did the same sort of thing. There was a 20 thousandths thick sheet of, I used PETG, PETG, and I did the same thing because on a, oh, you're talking about the suspense.
Yeah, suspense.
Yeah, I redid a suspense, and same thing. I locked the plastic down with the posts, and then bringing it here to Golden State Pinball Festival, it's quite hot, and so everything warped up.
Right.
So that's where I learned to make it float. So on the tag team, I have one post that is the hole in the plastic is cut tightly to that post. So it's kind of locked in with that post, and then there's another post on the opposite end of the playfield where I cut a slot that tightly fits over there. So then that way, it's still locked in position, but if it expands or contracts, that leaves it free to do that.
It's like having a floating floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing a floor installation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good presentation.
Thanks.
Well, thanks.
Oh, he's grabbing it to ask a question, right?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask you a question? Yeah. All right. So you've been involved in all of these homebrew discussions throughout the years. When are you going to do a homebrew, Emoto?
I know, I know. I don't know. So actually, as coming from a video game world, I just was introduced to Pin Builder on Steam, and you can make your own pinball machine on that too. And Anna's done a lot with the physics of, you could do rubbers, silicone, all stuff like that. That makes more sense in my brain than when I look at the coding and stuff with the Vision framework. So I will probably start there in like a Sims kind of version. And then she's actually working with Ernie at Trident. So the playfields that you build in that game, you can print giant sheets that he can take and do the CNC cutting on.
Nice.
So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Very cool.
It'll happen. It'll
Yes.
happen. Constantly inspired by y'all. So thank you.
I did want to thank Marco Specialties for sponsoring all of this. We didn't have the seminar series last year, and so I'm really glad that it's back. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Next year too, I promise.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
Get your presentations ready. All right, thank you everyone.
right,
That's
thank
a
you.
wrap for Pinball University.
Thank you.
of designers and creators of their very unique games. You can play all of them right across the hall, set up in the corner over there. And we're just going to start, and let's go, I guess, whoever wants to go first. We could do it like that. Introduce yourself, and let's talk about your game. All right. On the spot.
Guess we're going last.
Okay. I'm Ryan Brown. I do the Green Knight. There's not a lot of art on my game right now, so it just got ready for the show, just in time, but it's been a long process, but actually building has been a short process, and it's good to have a deadline because it makes you finish your game on time, even if it's not quite finished. But I don't know if you've seen mine, but the whole design philosophy on my game was upper playfields on pinball are like usually like, oh, it's a good idea, but then either the playfield is really small, and usually on the upper playfield you can't put anything underneath it because you have mechs and stuff. There can't be anything there. So my design philosophy was, what if I use 100% underneath the playfield, just to have that all available? So I could do that by the upper flippers have a very long shaft that go through the playfield and have a bunch of orbits. And so the flippers kind of dictate my orbits spacing. So I was able to have, using all that space underneath and still having a big upper playfield. And so far, it's turned out how I originally drew it up. And that was pretty much the whole design of just like, usually I would say, Homebrew, get a game that's already made and just make it yours. But I was like, oh, let's go 100%, just redo everything. And the only thing on my game that's maybe different is that usually people CNC the playfield wood. The only thing I've done differently is I laser etch for my job. So it's actually laser cut, a 100-watt laser. So you can actually cut half-inch piece of plywood on a laser. It'll do it. And this actually turned out really well because you don't have to worry about bits being dull or it didn't cut right, or it takes about the same amount of time as a CNC, but that's why everything's kind of wood, because I was just like, put it in there, laser it, and I can play with it on different versions.
Can you do the inserts?
I did not do inserts because I am actually going to do acrylic for my so I don't want to do inserts.
With the laser cutting.
Yeah, you can do that, but you don't have the stop. So what I did is on my game I have the little inserts. There's actually opposite where they're 3D printed and they go up and they're screwed in. But I had to get the height just right, or you sand it down. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want to do inserts in clear coat, and I do it acrylic, but I don't know if it's going to work. But that's why if you play my game, there's lights, but just enough for the show is what I got, because I think design-wise it's good to get your shots down first, because if you cut a hole in your playfield, there's a big hole there, and if you move your shot over, and then it's like, well, now what do you do? So you have to like put that up. But usually, I would say like whatever playfield you make first, there's going to be like 3 more playfields probably from that version. Yeah, it's been on CobraPin. It's been good. Rule-wise, MPF. I just got into it, so I'm on the very beginning of the MPF Mission Pinball Framework learning curve, and it's hard. But you get it to like the tutorial. It's hard, and you don't know what you're doing, and then you slowly like, oh, okay, and you kind of feel like, I think I'll feel like next year I'll feel like, oh yeah, it's no big problem, just do this. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed my game. If anything, if you don't like any input, let me know, because this, again, the show version, but I've already changed things in my next drawing, has already changed. So things are like instantly draining. I hope to not have the next version. But again, like you don't know how a ball travels until you actually flip it. Because you could draw all day long, like, oh, I think the ball's going to do this. It's not going to go where you want it to go. But yeah, that's it. Unless So,
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So, hi,
Alright.
I'm Sean Irby. I'm from Seattle, and I made 8-Ball Beyond, and yeah, that game has been in progress, or I've been working on it for the past 4 years, and yeah, I took it to the Northwest show around this time last year, and I've been trying to take it to other shows over the past year, so I brought it to Expo and then TPF, and now here at Golden State. Yeah.
Tell us about the concept of the game. Like, where did 8-Ball Beyond come from?
Yeah. So doing that game came out of me spending a year working on a different layout and just starting without a theme, just starting with geometry. And I don't know. After working on that for a while, I realized that it wasn't really going anywhere. So I needed to simplify things and come up with a clear concept. And yeah, so I thought about really simple games that I liked, like Alien Star or Stars, and also 8-Ball. And so after thinking more about those 8-Ball games and how I liked them and how everyone in my league liked playing them, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I made like a layout that incorporated some shot or some geometry from each of the original games? And so that's the concept for 8-Ball Beyond. Yeah.
Very cool. And is this game in its completed state?
Yeah, I still need to code the wizard mode. I don't know what happens if you beat all the rounds of pool in the game. It might crash. Who knows? But that's the last thing left to do. Otherwise, it's pretty complete.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back to you, Sean. Let's get next.
Hi, my name is Thomas Fulenwider. I make the CobraPin electronics, and the game that I brought and am featuring here is Tag Team, and this is the original game that I used to develop the CobraPin electronics. And the idea here was I just decided I'm going to make pinball control electronics because I think I can make a small single board pinball controller, and that might make it easier for people to get into the hobby. So for this tag team, I picked up a populated playfield. It was in bad condition and also cheap, so it was perfect. And then I started working on the electronics and getting it all hooked up together. And I put it in this plywood box here, and just started coding up in MPF. I'm not really a programmer, but I learned MPF for this, and then I ended up launching a Kickstarter for the CobraPin controller in 2021, so I've been doing it about 3 years, and it's been a very fun adventure, not only to make my own games, but to be a part of helping other people make their games. So I really enjoy watching videos of people's games that have used my electronics, and then of course at shows like this, it's great to actually play the games, the people who have made a game with my electronics. So, yeah.
yeah, that's how I started. Like, because the other platforms are malmorphic, and then the fast pinball, but there's kind of a price, like what, like $500-600 to get into it, and then he came out with the Kickstarter. It was like 180, I think, is for now. And that's like doable, because you're like, oh, what if I blow? Because I read guys like, I had fast and blow the board up because you put a coil where it doesn't belong, and you got to buy another one. So it's like that's what I started, because it was like but he's out of Sacramento, so it made it better, made it better too. Where like, it's easier and easier every year to make games now. I think it's getting more affordable because there's more support too. Also, because Thomas has been here doing CobraPin a couple of years, and he's making more and more parts, more and more things, and we didn't have a homebrew section originally, and now we have all kinds of games, and I think we're having, like in Sacramento, we have we're growing this community. It helps when someone makes the boards.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Awesome.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Bovenzi. I am a fraud because I'm sitting surrounded by all the programmers, the professional programmers here for their games, custom mechs. And my fraudness is I said, I'm going to start with Jack's Open at Gottlieb EM because I like playing the game, and I'm going to do a retheme. So I guess I'm part of the homebrew, so thank you for accepting me, at least on the panel. Yeah, it was a labor of love. I always wanted to do a Robert Crumb theme. I thought it'd be cool, and again, don't do it on a game that you don't like playing, right? Pick a game that actually has got some staying power to it. So Eric Neff helped me get the Jack's Open, and I worked on it and had to rely on the kindness of many strangers. I'll do afterward. I've got some props over there, so perhaps what you can learn from me is how I did the artwork and how I got some professionals to do all that stuff with me. I'm just the dumb engineer, but let's do the pros with the artwork. So I also try to include a lot of the clip art. PG-13, please. I wanted to be able to bring it to a show, right? So there's some stuff that maybe shouldn't be on machines from his artistry. But so I used a lot of clip art and worked with the people to do the artwork here. So we did plastics. We did the playfield, the cabinet art, the translite, and again, oh my. A lot of work, pretty much a long COVID project for me. So, and like I said, I'll take some questions at the end. I'll show off some of the techniques that maybe could help others for that. So. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm Mike Latiolais. Mine started, my obsession started in college. My wife decided she was tired of bowling one night, and we went in the back room and played Elvira Scared Stiff. That's 1996. And I fell in love, and being a software engineer, the first thing I wanted to do was build one. But then being a poor college kid, I had to wait 20 years. So now, this started off actually as a $100 Gulfstream that had a completely wrecked cabinet. The art was flaking off, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it, so I grabbed the parts I wanted, I squirreled away the playfield. A friend of mine, who was actually in attendance, decided to try out the project. Eventually it ended back up in my hands, and she had changed the shape a little bit, some of the inserts, and when my son, who is the artist, wandered by, he said, "That looks like a devil's pitchfork," and therefore the theme was born. And that was really, you know, I want to say 3 months of work to get it into a flipping state for last year. And then one person's lucky shot completely destroyed the slings. So I had to do a little re-engineering there. But yeah, everything on there just sort of was trial and error. And parts that I had sitting around because I'm also a hoarder. But like all the plastics and everything, it was all artwork that then we laminated onto polycarb, cut out, sanded out by hand. And it turns out pretty fun. At first, it's a CobraPin, and it's running on MPF, and I started adding so many rules and logic and extra modes, and it just got to where I didn't even want to work on it. It was, you know, it was too much. And I finally simplified it down. I said, I want Space Shuttle on acid, basically, or on speed, and that's what it became. And it's a pretty fun game now. So, yeah, I'll take questions later. But.
Okay, my name is Adrian Degroot. I built the Joust that's based off of the '83 Joust, although it's a little bit shorter. And it's, you know, when you've got an apartment, how do you squeeze one more pinball machine into the place, you make a coffee table. So it's a lower height, and so it's all the rules are based off of the '83 Joust, and I programmed it in MPF, and the boards are the multimorphic boards, and did a bit of woodworking and some 3D printing, and did a lot of research trying to figure out the bill of materials of the original one. Originally, I was building it up so I could learn about building a pinball machine. My only machine was a Twilight Zone, and so I kind of jumped into the deep end building this one up. You know, there's twice as many mechs because there's two sides to it. I didn't really think that through, so there's a lot of work, a lot of wiring, and the next one I'm definitely going to do a better job on the wiring, so I'm not going to show the underside too much. But yeah, it's been a really great learning process, and my intent is to build my own design of a head-to-head game, because I think that format is just kind of a unique one that really wasn't built upon in the industry, just because it didn't really fit well into an arcade, having, you know, two people play a game. It just didn't work out. But now, you know, with events like this and home ownership, I think that the head-to-head game is a good outlet. So so I'm looking to build my own, and taking some input on that. And so yeah, I guess we'll talk about in depth later. So.
How hard? Hey, Joust is a super rare game, right? There's only
Yes.
a handful of cabinets in the whole world. And how, like, what was your process on being able to source enough to create essentially your mini Joust?
So once the play field was available, then that kind of sparked it that I could actually do it, play field and the plastics, and then I figured out the rest just from like photos and from on Pinside. There was a great thread about rebuilding one, and then there's one that's here at the show, and I got hands on another one to take reference on, but I did a lot of drawings. My background is engineering and project management, so I figured out the whole bomb. So yeah, it was a lot of research went into it, and 3D printing the parts that I couldn't find. So.
All right, Chris.
Hey guys, Chris Dana. It was a dark and stormy night, probably 2009. My son and I were leaving the Pacific Pinball Museum, and he said, "Hey Dad, we should build our own." And I said, "Hey, that's a pretty good idea." I've never owned a pinball machine in my life. So I started this project with absolutely no idea what to do. So if any of you out there are interested in building your own games, if I can do it, you guys can definitely do it. So I would definitely encourage you. Hopped Up is my game over there. I also have brought Green Out, which was my third game. So I'm just finished my fourth one, which was Hopped Up. And it's been a 14-year learning process, learning how to become a fabricator, a pretty decent coder, making my own music, working with artists, working with voiceover folks. It's just been a super cool process. So like I said, I really encourage you guys. I brought some examples of, because I noticed a lot of homebrew games don't have ramps, because ramps are hard to make. How do you go about doing it? And so I'll show you my process, which is CNC routing a form, and then using PET-G to vacuum form on top of that. And what you actually end up with is some giant 2x2 piece of plastic that's all warped. So then I make a jig that'll sit inside of a laser cutter. And you put your big gnarly plastic in the jig, and you let the laser cutter trim it out so it fits like it should. So just wanted to show an example that, this is all common stuff, all stuff I got from Home Depot. And it's just about curiosity and going on an adventure and learning how to do stuff. So yeah, that's what I got.
Chris, this is your fourth pinball machine. You have several out there. Can you just run through your discography?
My
That's not the right
catalog
term.
of
Yeah,
pinball
your catalog
machines.
of pinball machines you
Yeah.
made.
The first one, which took me 4 years, was based on the regular show, cartoon, fantastic cartoon, my son's favorite cartoon. The second one was a sci-fi themed game that I did bring up to the Northwest Pinball Show about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, called Elemental. Never ended up being super happy with that one, so I actually harvested it for parts for a Green Out, which is the cannabis-themed pinball machine over there. I don't smoke myself, but I do enjoy some good beer, which is why I took the layout of Green Out, which I really liked, and made some improvements, and that's what Hopped Up became.
Very cool. All right, so one of the things that I noticed just from this group up here is we have so many different systems that these games are on. You know, the P3 Rock, CobraPin, Fast Pinball system. Can y'all tell us why you chose the system that you did and kind of what the benefits are from using that system? Like, why did you go that route when there's this option, so many options to choose from?
CobraPin is cheaper.
Yeah.
That's a great reason.
And it's great.
What I also like about the CobraPin is it was just one board. So underneath my playfield is just one CobraPin board, a power supply, and a little mini PC, and that's it. There's a lot of wires, but like other boards that if you like, you know, the new pinball machines, you look at there's just all kinds of they still take up the head, and like there's a lot of stuff going on there, like, you know, satellite boards. But I liked it. It was cheaper and it was one board. So if they go, okay, I can fit it anywhere I want. So right now mine's in the bottom, but I can put it in the back or up top, and it's the technology. You know, if you look at an old pinball machine, they had to use the whole head because that's all the trunks. You know, but everything's getting tinier. Like the little PC, I originally had a Raspberry Pi. It wasn't powerful enough, but the PC I have is like this. It's so tiny, and it runs like you can run video games on it now. Like the technology is there where things are so cheap and so tiny that we could fit things that, you know, I'm sure Williams back in the day wish they could do.
My machines are, the first one was based on the original P-Rock system. Since then I've been using the Fast hardware. I'll probably migrate to CobraPin going forward. And I'm using MPF for software. And the reason I chose those is because of the community. And if you get stuck as many times as I do with problems I can't solve, having a group of people that are totally willing to help and fired up about what you're working on is super important. So, and I'll just say this community has grown, and I mean it's just great people. And I remember when I was first starting, there was like, you know, some guy in the Sudan and somebody else in Brazil making their own pinball machines. Like it was hard finding help, and there's actually a pretty decent community nowadays.
The Legends Valhalla, that was a homebrew originally that American Pinball picked up. So, you know, that's like the dream, right? But it happened. It happened for what was it? Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden.
That was originally what was it? Archer. And he had Archer homebrew, and that turned into like Jaws, and you know that just took off.
Yeah, the cool thing about the system is that you don't need to have that backglass or the backboard. You can have the boards on mine. They're underneath the playfield. You know, there's no backglass and joust. And with these boards, you can do whatever you want to. You can come up with some game that doesn't even look like pinball. You know, that you can.
Like Treehouse.
Yeah, like Treehouse. Yeah, there's a few really cool examples that are more like art, kinetic art.
A lot of y'all are using Mission Pinball Framework. Can you explain to the audience what that is and how it's used in your games?
So Mission Pinball Framework is written in Python, which is a fairly common language. A lot of engineers and hardware and software engineers use it. But you don't actually have to program anything in Python to use Mission Pinball. framework. It's all configuration files. So once you understand the format, which is sometimes a little bit tricky, you just define what's in your system. Here's this set of switches, here's this set of lamps, this set of solenoids. And then you have modes that say this is what it interacts with this time. This is what that switch scores every time. And you look for events. It's an entire event-driven system. And so once you get that, wrap your head around that, it becomes almost trivial to do the base stuff. Now, the corner cases are always going to be hard, but that's what the community is for,
Yeah, awesome.
Sorry, can I add one more thing to that?
Please.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about MPF is that you've heard we use different systems here, but they all use the same Mission Pinball framework. And like Chris was saying, that really bolsters the community, and if everybody's contributing to the same software framework, then it gets better and more refined faster. So, and the really cool thing about Mission Pinball Framework is you can actually mix and match hardware. So you can put a fast board in to your machine and a CobraPin board if you want features from both. I'm not saying you should. I like the ability to switch. So like if you end up going with one hardware system, you can actually switch it at some point if you decide. So I like, that we're all in the same software community together so that we can help each other. So.
Pass this mic around to you so we can get it
Thank
on
you.
the
Then
recording.
I don't have to repeat it.
Are there like rules or sets of rules that you wanted to implement but that were not possible or not worth the effort in Mission Pinball Framework? Like how do you drop down to the lower level and do whatever you need to?
Yeah, so it is possible to insert your own custom Python code. I have started to do that twice and then realized that there was a method to do it within the framework already. And so I switched back to that. I don't know what other people's experience is.
Yeah, so I would say like 90% of my game is using what MPF wants you to do and to use config files for everything. But there were some cases like I have a big grid of inserts on my game that point towards the targets you need to hit, and that can change dynamically. So that was a use case where I did have to like drop down into the Python. Yeah, it's not super well advertised on the MPF site, but it's very easy to do that if you want to.
Yeah, I was having a hard time with having two ball troughs with the head-to-head game, and I posted about that on the user group, the MPF user group, and Jan, who was one of the major contributors, he had built the game called Good versus Evil, which was a head-to-head, and I ended up using his code to manage both of those ball troughs. So again, it's a great community, and there's custom things that are out there. If you're not a software programmer, there's other people who have done things.
Is there any other questions from the audience? For anyone specific? No? All right, you see we have this giant crowd. This is our biggest crowd of the day so far, so thanks everyone for coming to Pinball University. Assuming they are all here because they all want to go down this same journey as y'all and make their own custom games. What kind of tips can you give someone just fresh starting off? Where do they go? How do they figure out how to start making their own pinball machine?
I'm going to go from the the fake person that I am here and start with the artwork. Some of us engineers are not good artists, but we're creative. So I'm going to go with the idea that if I can show off some of this stuff later, I used a company called Game On Graphics in Michigan, and what appealed that to me was I can print up the vinyl cabinet art for a pinball machine. It's like, why would I not do that, right? So they did. And so as I came up with the artwork for the cabinet, we explored it a little further. So I'm going to kind of describe from here what I did. So the translate is Dan Fonts from the Pacific Pinball Museum, who is an artist. So he took kind of the Gottlieb theme of one big clip art of Mr. Natural there, and Game On Graphics printed my translates. So the flipper room, I'm plugging everybody, framed it up for me, and it works out well. The play field is also from Game On Graphics, and this is a trick that you might use, you may not. Some people are drawing right on the whitewood, some people are printing on it, some people are using overlays. I did a little different on mine. Wade Krause was looking for Jack's Open, so he designed Jack's Open to sell back to the community. Luckily, Wade did. That's what's hanging off the pedestal here. He gave me the artwork so I could start laying it out. Game On Graphics did that for me. They subcontracted to an artist, and so technically, you have to go back to arcade, and it's a control panel overlay, right? So it's got some grit to it, and so what it did was adhere that to the play field, clear coat, clear coat, clear coat, and that's how that all smoothed out. So perhaps with some of the artwork, you can do your own. Way I did plastics, there's a gentleman in upstate New York, if you look on CPR's website, he did an alternate set of Joker poker, and I have that on the table. And I said, hey, could you help me design the clip art, or at least the plastics for the thing? And he said, sure. So we did some horse trading, and so that's how it worked out with the plastics. So at least from an artwork perspective, don't be afraid, give it a shot, right? And you know, you can go a lot further than I thought with other people's help.
So I think one of the easiest ways to get into it is if you find a play field, like at the swap meet today, that looks like it has some flow that sort of speaks to you. You can start with that, and then you don't have to figure out the geometry of your first game. You don't have to, you know, figure out CAD, anything like that. Start off just stripping the art and putting in new mechs and just seeing where it goes. And that at least gets you flipping. That at least gets you, you know, writing basic code up, and will get you started. My very first game was actually Middle Earth, which was here last year, and I didn't make any changes to the playfield. I gutted the CPU and all the power and everything, and built it up out of a CobraPin system. And it just had new rules, and it had a HDMI display instead of the alphanumeric stuff that was there, and it worked out pretty well. It was kind of a pain, you know, rewiring the switches, but it wasn't too bad. The next one started off, like I said, as an old EM. That one was just a bare board when I started. My son made the graphics. He's studying to be an artist in college right now. So I got lucky there. And we had that printed up by Fast Signs just as a vinyl wrap. On top of that, I cut a playfield protector for it. And yeah, just started bolting parts onto it and writing code. Again, starting with an existing playfield is a great way to learn all the underlying systems. So you don't have to start from scratch, but there are ways to start from scratch as well. There's a company called TRIDENT PINBALL, for example, that they will send you a whitewood that just has the slings, the trough, flipper mechs, and you know the bottom third cut. Everything else is blank. They will send you the entire kit, every bit of hardware you need to wire it up and get that thing flipping. And so if you really want to start with a fresh idea, that's a great way to do it.
There's a good website out there called How to Build a Pinball Machine. It's a great place to start. It has all kinds of good information. Also, a lot of the tools you need, you may already have. I do all my design using Adobe Illustrator. I just knew it, so I just used it. It's easy. It can export to different file types, and you can send those off to makers out there in the world that'll laser cut your stuff for you or 3D print your stuff for you. So you don't even need to buy all this fabrication stuff if you don't want to. So yeah, easy to get started. I would also say my other piece of advice would be take this enormous elephant and chop it up into tiny bite-sized pieces, because it's easy to find yourself discouraged. So if you can find little incremental successes as you go, it'll really keep you motivated.
Awesome. One of the greatest things that I found with the homebrew and custom games community is that there is this whole community around it too, where y'all are all talking to each other, helping each other out with ideas and stuff. Where can you direct folks to kind of get involved into communities like that, where you can find support from other people kind of going through the same journey, and Discords or Slack channels of communication, and really get involved and stay involved? Because having cheerleaders, everyone rooting each other on, it really goes a long way when you're doing something kind of so enduring.
Yeah, so there's a lot of options there, and you can partake in as many of them as you care to. So, I mean, there's a Pinside forum, so you can post your project on Pinside, and oftentimes I've found that by posting my project there, it gives me an incentive to put updates up there, and also it kind of rejuvenates my own interest when people start responding to it. It's like, okay, yeah, other people are seeing this and they think it's cool too. I'll keep working on it. But then there's also MPF users Google group, and so when you're having some software issue, you can post it on there and get some help for it. There's a number of Discord and Slack channels. One of the ones that I'm active on is the TRIDENT PINBALL Discord, like he mentioned earlier, and I don't know. There's a number of others. Do you have any others? I think isn't there a fast? There's a fast one? Yeah.
Strictly Custom on Facebook.
Strictly Custom Pinball on Facebook. Yeah, that one's a great group, and I will have to thank Danzig, because I believe that his Strictly Custom Pinball group is the reason why my Kickstarter was successful. So thank you.
Awesome. Was there anyone else? Did you want to say? Oh, sorry, I thought you raised your hand, Ryan.
Community, so not too long ago, I couldn't even get the lights to turn on. And I actually messaged Thomas, because I was on there just like, there's the MPF, like I can't even get my lights, like they turn on, but they don't turn on. Like I was so like discouraged of like, this is supposed to be like the easiest thing of a light going on and off, and I don't know why I'm not getting it. And I just went on MPF, and I messaged Thomas too about like, because he had the CobraPin, and I was like, what do you do? And it's like, oh, it was just like this little thing. But like, a little thing I wouldn't know, because you can go in to talk to somebody, because you get stuck at a certain point, and you might be able to figure it out, but that could be like down here, but if you just ask someone like, oh, just do this. So it was great to have like, there's not a lot of places like Pinside, MPF group, but like they're there, and it's just, you just have to go ask. And sometimes you just go out and like post something on Reddit. You can go on Reddit and be like, here, I've seen people on Reddit go, here's my project, and people will go, it's cool. Or you can ask a question on there. I've learned so many things just like asking a question online, and you never know who's like the expert on that of anything, any hobby, right? Someone will be like, yeah, do this, and now that's great because we know online communities are just growing even on Facebook. You can go on Facebook. There's a custom pinball group on Facebook that people are posting that projects you would never know about. And they're like, here's a project, and I've learned things like, oh, he did it this way, and that's a cool idea. So I'll take that in mind. So a lot of communities. I think it's growing every year. Definitely more and more people are attempting to like, I'll make my own pinball, and it's only going to get better.
YouTube, you did some good YouTube videos.
He's got a question in the back.
And I would say that right now we're sort of in the golden age, because we have all this hardware available. Like 10, 15 years ago, this is a nightmare to start off. But now, with 3D printing and with sort of these cottage industries of people just like, oh, this guy makes ramps. You can just send him something, he'll make you a ramp. Or, you know, they have metal cutting businesses like Sen Cut Sen. So I'm working on my first metal ramp right now. And we're talking, I might end up investing $100 and get 2 or 3 ramps out of it. If I'm ever insane enough to build more than one copy of these things. And that's all possible now, like in this maker space that has sort of grown up that we can take advantage of.
Very cool. This next question, I'm going to start with Sean, but I'd love for y'all to chime in too. So Sean, you have toured 8 Ball Beyond pretty much all across the country. You've hit several different states. What have you learned from that experience and like kind of the benefits of bringing your game around? And after so many people have seen it and played it, what are you most proud of on your game?
Let's see. I think the first lesson learned from bringing the game to the first show that I took it to was that players are going to treat it like a pinball machine. I mean, I should have seen this coming. For some reason, like part of me thought that, oh, maybe they might baby it a little, but I think within 5 minutes of setting it up at the Northwest show, it was on 2 legs with someone like trying to save the ball. So yeah, I mean, it's cool to see that players are gonna, you know, treat it like a pinball machine they would expect, and like maybe if they drain their ball while the grace period should be active and it doesn't happen, they'll tell you about it. And so yeah, other than that, lessons learned. I think I was maybe a bit too hovery the first show that I took it to, like trying to tell people like what to do on the game. But yeah, I think players, it's better to just let someone experience it on their own and not really tell them what to do. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of was I don't remember like what person was playing, but you know, someone you know, looked a little bit at the rule card before they played the game, and they started their game and did the progression of hitting the 7 balls that they had to do, and then make the 8-ball shot by doing this combo thing. And when they made that shot, they like pumped their fist, and that was the thing I was super proud of, just because you can like squeeze an emotion out of somebody, and like that's what it's all about, I think, for me. Yeah.
Very cool. Anyone else want to chime in on your experiences touring your game around?
Well, as I've brought Crumb to several shows, I get people that just look at me and said, that is cool. I really want to do this, right? I want to do my own game. So maybe it's inspiration. Maybe it's people just picking up on saying, yeah, I can do this too. So I think that's maybe that's the fun result of actually putting together a machine like that.
And I'll just second the tilt bob comment. So if you bring a homebrew to a location or a show, definitely put a tilt bob in it. I had somebody come up to me, and I'd seen them play, and they were so angry because they had tilted, and they said, I tilted on your game. And I was like, yes, you did, and you should have tilted with the way you were moving that around. So if you care about your machine, put a tilt bob in it.
They're there for a reason. Awesome. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. I'd love to pass the mic around for any questions. Anyone want to talk about games they're building? We have a bunch of experts right here on the stage just waiting to help you.
I got here a little late, so sorry if you talk about this, but how many people are hooking up like MPF to simulators or to like virtual pinball, or not doing that at all? Just curious about the kind of like how much you simulate before you put it on a piece of plywood.
So I did that with my game. So there's a tool on the Mission Pinball GitHub repo called the MPF VPX bridge, and so it takes a little bit of setup to configure VPX Visual Pinball to interface with MPF, but you can totally do it. And I think I used it for like the first 5–10% of the project of just some very, very like boilerplate kind of rules to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I stopped using that and just switched to doing things physically with actual game code. But yeah, it's a super, super useful tool in the beginning.
Yeah, so I didn't use the VPX bridge, but I just used Visual Pinball to kind of lay out a few things just to try out some shots. So there was no logic involved in it, just feeling out what the shots were like. But then I quickly moved to like cardboard and hot glue and everything, poster board. And then the other thing is you can actually code it. You can code a game without having a game in front of you. So there's a part of MPF called MPF Monitor, and you can actually have your game code running on your computer, but not targeting any actual hardware. And you can have a picture of your playfield, and you can drag and drop all of your switches and lights onto that playfield. And there's like status information about the events that are happening. And so you can code a game without actually having one in front of you. So I've coded a game for somebody in Australia, and I've never touched his machine. And that's actually something that I would recommend to people to consider. If you're nervous about the software side of things, you can actually try that without having any hardware. So before you invest any money, you can like, I think I could probably do the software, but I'm not sure. Like, go ahead and try it, because for a lot of people, I think the software is the toughest part. But now that I say that, maybe don't start there because you might get discouraged. But so it depends on what type of person you are.
Yeah. Anyone want to ask a question?
Well, I was going to say that I am a hands-on learner, so I would like to use CAD, and I would like to use VPX, and it always inevitably ends up on my dining room table, and it's just me with a soldering iron, and something starts to flip, and I get excited, and that's about it.
Yeah. All right, we got another question over here.
So this is something I've toyed around with like some homebrews in the past, and I think one thing I like to do is like scale modeling. I do like a quarter scale machine. I mock it up in cardboard, like kind of make quarter scale models to see where things if they fit in the concept. Do have any of you ever like started on a small scale then worked up versus like doing it virtually?
I guess that's the answer.
Baby pinball.
Well, like a pinball it's like a inch and a 16th or something like that. It's always been that way. And when you mess with the ball size, it's like the flippers and stuff. They're all physics. Like you're gonna be totally different. So if you want to scale down and you're gonna scale up, I don't think it'll translate one to one.
You have to translate the energy levels.
Yeah, because like you know, like the pop, you know, like the flippers, you know, the length and all that in the rubbers. Like I think I remember like there was a guy doing like the mini ball on Munsters. He had the mini ball and he wanted to make a mini one. And I remember reading it. He had to get the mini flippers and stuff like that. And I don't know he finished, but I really thought it seemed totally like its own thing. Like you have to design everything now. Everything has to be redesigned because you have to account for all the spacing and that. So I thought about it though.
Yeah, you just have to do it. The way I've always pictured it is doing it like based on energy, like like how much like potential energy you have to go up to playfield, and you can scale from there. But so I think it's an interesting avenue that would be maybe easier if the hardware were there.
Oh, but my next game will be small though. It'll be the same ball size, but I'm going to do like a weird, like smaller, longer. But I have a cocktail at home. And it's an interesting size, having a cocktail size. It definitely it's different, but not bad in a bad way, I think.
And I would say, going with that, I understand what you're trying to do is scale it up, but the physics are entirely different, right? The shot placement, the geometry, what you're trying to do, you might end up doing so much more work than you had actually intended. You know, I'm not discouraging you, but I'm just saying that it might be one of these like, well, that didn't scale correctly. Yeah. Just because you want those angles, you want the strength of a flipper, you want the size the dynamics of a real ball. You know, that's why Powerball and Twilight Zone plays different, or you know, something else. So.
What is this, a pinball machine for ants? Awesome. Any other questions? I had a question. Most of y'all did your pinball machines all by yourself, powered through it. Chris, I believe you had a team. Chris had a team. Someone had other teams. Like, can you explain what that process is like of working with a team? Like, you don't have to do everything by yourself, like the software, the hardware. You know, Jake Danzig, we talked about him earlier from the Strictly Customs group on Facebook. He's one of like my pure examples of he just went like complete producer role. And he's like, I want a Dukes of Hazzard pinball machine. I'm gonna find a bunch of artists, a software person, a hardware mechanical engineer, an artist, and then put them all together. What's y'all's thoughts on navigating through that, and would that be something that y'all would be open to doing too in the future too? Because if you think of like Stern or Jersey Jack and everything, it's not just Keith Elwin making a game. He has a whole village working with him.
I bug some of these people in the audience on a daily basis to come to my house and help. And so far it's mostly just me.
Yeah, definitely get friends that help out. Yeah, Thomas helped me troubleshoot a lot of things when I blow up a MOSFET or something like that. So, you know, those lessons learned are good, and it's good to have friends that can help you out with those kind of things.
Art is the scary thing for me because, like you said, I'm creative, but not very good at the art part. So I am interested in working with somebody on artwork for my next game. So find some.
I know a guy.
Yeah. We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Adrian? Or? Oh, Chris. Sorry. That's why. I mean, man, y'all just.
The ball guy's on the right side.
I'm sorry. I was like making eye contact with you guys, like, oh God, which one? Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
No,
you at the team.
I was just going to agree with Thomas. It's like, you know, a lot of us can do the, you know, mechanical stuff, but man, we need you artists out there to come hook up with us so we can do our next thing.
Well, I'm going to try to do the artwork on mine, but I have like a limit. You know, like I can do art, but to a limit. And so what I'm probably going to do is do art, and I go, someone else, you know, that can really like finish it. You know, maybe that's where I'm probably, hopefully I can finish it, but like it takes a professional to be like, maybe, you know, especially coloring and stuff. So that's my plan. We'll see how long it goes.
Very cool. And then I guess the last question to wrap it all up is, hopefully maybe you know, what's next for each of you? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I can't stop thinking about new designs. So while I was finishing this one up, there was a high-speed playfield on my table that took over my dining room for the last 4 months, maybe. And it's becoming, I go to this Misfit Cabaret show in San Francisco a lot, and I think it's a great idea for a theme, and they're local and they're willing to do voice work. So I'm going to partner with them for that one. That one I'm building new mechs for. I'm going to be doing some wire form work, things that I haven't gotten into, the metal ramp that I'm designing. And then after that, I've got a whitewood already waiting, and that one's going to, my wife's a fan of a band called Faster Pussycat, and if you are of a certain age, you might remember them. And yeah, it's going to be less of a PG sort of game. But I have a lot of mechs based on their songs that have just been living in my head, so I can't stop.
Next. What's next for you? Yeah, let's go right.
So I'll be working on this game for a while, but I've already started designing. My wife wants a Pushing the Cat pinball. Yeah, it's going to be pushing. I'm actually pretty stoked to do it. So he's going to go on, I'm going to opera spectrum. It'll be like very kid friendly. And I have design ideas, you know, like because I don't have a big house, so how do I fit more pinball in a house? Well, I gotta make the pinball machine smaller. So that's what I'm gonna do. So eventually, like once you start a homebrew, I think it just keeps going. Like there's always another project. There's always gonna be another game. Like how many, I don't know. That's why we make smaller pinballs so I can fit more in my house. But yeah, when you have a theme, I think it helps too. Like I wanna do this theme. It's like, okay, that's what you get. And I get design around that. Keep going.
How about you, Sean?
A few months ago, I had this idea of using the plunger rod as a control surface. Like you can twist the shooter rod continuously, right? And so I finished up like a plunger rod that senses rotation. And so I realized I could do a cool driving game with that. So you could twist the shooter rod and control diverters on like the playfield and stuff. So I'm gonna try and do a speed racer game next.
That's how it starts. You have a single idea, and like, I think that's what it starts. You have a single idea, and it turns into like a game. Like mine was like, what if the playfield was like really big up a playfield, and that was my game right now. And now it's like the next one's like, what if I have a bunch of pop bumpers in a certain area that's not there before? That's the next game. And like having a driving, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So my next game is I'm going to release it as open source, and I don't know if he remembers that he agreed to this, but my father's in the crowd and he's going to voice it. But it will be like Dauntless Deputy themed, so like a goofy cop theme. And in addition to that, of course, I make electronics, so I'm constantly working on like the next system. So I'll keep supporting the existing CobraPin system, but I'm coming out with another one that I'm labeling the Fang system. So Fang CobraPin will come out soon.
How about Chris and Adrian?
Yeah, as mentioned, I'm going to work on a head-to-head. I'm going to do something that has a little bit more flow between the two sides, as opposed to like shooting right down the middle or close shots. I've got some ideas on that, and then also I ended up getting a Silver Ball Mania that I can strip down and redo and retheme. It kind of happened like, oh, I got some ideas for that one too. So yeah, keep on coming up new ideas.
I'm ready to start game number 5. When I lie in bed at night, I pretend that I'm on a pinball playfield and I follow the ball around. I do. And sometimes it puts me to sleep, and sometimes I come up with a neat idea and I have to get up and put it down in my notebook, and then I can't fall asleep at all. But I'm ready to get started on the next game. Right now, I think it's a dark Celtic fantasy theme, but I want to hook up with a good digital artist, and it may change.
Awesome. And how about for you, Jim? Now that you're over here,
I'm going to be the party pooper. I'm one and done. Sorry. You have creative geniuses that are onto their next project. From inception and customizing things, this is about 10 years for me. So time to go on to other things. But yeah, good luck, and we're actually looking at all this stuff. If you hadn't heard about Motorhead at TPF, you need to look it up, because I was there and saw the game, played it, and just amazing, right? What you can do, creativity, artwork, how professionally it was done. So, yeah.
So, Jim, since you're standing there, do you want to show
Yeah.
us?
Yeah, I can do this. So, Translate, again, done as an artwork project from Dan. The play field, this is the control panel. You can feel it's clear-coated very nicely. Source artwork, clip art. Yeah, Robert Crumb with somebody playing pinball. This is the gentleman who did the Jack's Open graphics. So it's okay, well, let's take a piece of clip art, let's do it on color photo paper, right? And get tap plastics, cut out the same thing. You attach this with craft dots underneath, and it's very simple. So, that's your field. this is the gentleman's work he did for that, so I wanted to give him credit for you know, showing off what you can do with original design and redesigning plastics. So anyway, I'll take other questions later.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to have another homebrew seminar tomorrow. Thomas, can you just give a quick explanation of the seminar tomorrow for CobraPin?
Yeah, so the seminar tomorrow will be talking about actually how we put together our games with CobraPin, and I'll be doing a little build demo where I'm actually connecting things to the CobraPin controller, and hopefully give you a little bit of an idea of you know, what some MPF code looks like, how you might work with MPF, and yeah, anything else?
Yeah, and so I'll be talking about specifically the CobraPin angle on the 2 games that I built using it, and sort of my lessons learned.
Yep, going over lessons learned that built the system.
Yeah, so feel free to bring more questions, any specifics about any interest that you have in getting into homebrew, and we can talk about it then. And we're always willing to talk about this when we're out on the floor as well. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let's give them a round of applause. Woo. All right. Our next seminar is going to be with TRIDENT 374 Michael Madsen, and he's going to teach us all about how to stream pinball. So that's going to start in about 30 minutes.